and that's to me where my passion for growing business performance through people comes from. I do have the solid view that if people are really engaged with the business, you will see less employment relationship problems, as well as you have the opportunity to increase productivity, and you'll see, a really good decline in some of those other costs, such as absenteeism and that sort of thing. So we're going to talk through some ideas around that today. I'll just take you to the agenda. So what we're looking at covering today is 3 types of employees that affect business performance, and we'll go into a bit of detail and think about how that applies to your actual business. I want to do some convincing, so I'm sorry, I've got a little bit of research, not too much, but it's quite compelling research about why you should really care about whether your staff are engaged or not. And then we're going to talk about a framework to engage people. And as I talk through, that's going to provide a bit of a case study. Oh, I've just got a bit of feedback coming in there. And Nikki, if you could just put yours on mute, that would be great. Sorry, that's not you. So if anyone's just joined, just what's really helpful with webinars is if you can just go to the top of the screen and keep your microphone on mute. And it's just along the top of the screen by 3 CX, and that just helps the dialogue. Okay, I think we're good. And you can also put your camera off as well on that menu. Otherwise, I've got lots of lovely images on my PowerPoint, so we'll have a time for that later. But in the interim, just be good to kind of work through the slides, and then we'll have some questions and answers at a later point. Okay. So what we're covering is the 3 things I've just discussed there on the slide. When we go through the framework about engaging people, that's going to be run through a bit of a case study as well, just to keep it interesting. I've been working with a client recently on this particular subject just over the last year. And we've got some really great results to talk to you about as a consequence of putting in place this framework. So we'll keep that interesting in the later part of the episode. So the 3 types of employees that we often see, probably through the HR lens, and probably what you see as well, just in terms of your business and working with people, employees often fall into 3 types of groups. And the first one that we probably see more of than we'd like to is group 3. So that's your actively disengaged employee. And these guys are they're not happy in their place of work for various reasons. Can be personal, can be related to the workplace. And how that plays out in the workplace often is that they're busy being unhappy, and that can affect other people around them. They can talk about their disengagement with the business in different ways, and that leads to other conversations with other people in the business. And if that person happens to be a really good influencer, they can be a real terrorist in your business as well, in terms of really building that hype around why it's such a crappy place to work. So those people we've kind of really worked towards lifting, at least into group 2. Often, but sometimes, when the employment relationship has become so difficult and communication's broken down, sometimes there's some other options around. If it can't be managed, we often have to come in and work through an exit. So there's other costs, which we'll talk about with that group. The other group that we often see is that group that's not particularly in love with working with their employer. They're not really that passionate about the brand. They don't go out there talking about the brand in a really positive way. They're probably just there to get paid and just get through the day, make sure they get their little break times in there, and you're not seeing a lot of growth and innovation and a lot of energy around what they're doing in their work. And sometimes, they're also trying to fill in their day because actually they don't have enough to do. And that's a little thing called presenteeism. So people tend to just try and stretch out, tasks and activities for as long as they can, so they actually look busy, but actually they're not really that productive. So the group that obviously we all aspire to have, and probably all want to be, is fully engaged with our business. And that's where we're really connected to the purpose of what the business is trying to achieve, and feel a real sense of relationship with that, and really want to achieve good things for the business. When we're in that space, we tend to be more innovative and think about working in different ways, and working probably smarter as opposed to harder. And those people can actually lift group 2. So if you've got some really good champions in that group, they can actually really pull up that second group. So they're really good to have. And obviously, if we had at least 50% of those people, we'd be pretty happy. So that's what the framework we're going to talk about today is about. It's how do we actually move people through those levels so that we can actually get them into that space. I just want to just break for a little minute, otherwise you'll get sick of me talking for the next half an hour. I just want you to just take a moment and just think about your business, or perhaps other businesses that you might work with. And just in terms of the scale, just think about where you would put employees in that business. So think about, how many do you have in 3, if any? How many in 2, if any, and how many you have in 1. So I just want you to take a little minute to do that, and then turn off your mute, and then we can just have a bit of a discussion about that. Be looking for a bit of sharing of that if anyone's keen, and we can talk through about how those people actually might play out and impact on your businesses in actually applied ways. So I'll just give you about a minute just to think through that. Have a little drink while we're waiting. Hard with news, isn't it? Because you have no idea. Yeah. And you just, another point too, you can also write comments in the webinar. So that's down the right-hand side of the screen. So that's a good place to either ask a question. You can do that at any time during the presentation. But also, if you just want to put your reflection in there in terms of where you think your employees are, I can read that out for you as well. But it'd be good to get a bit of discussion around that. So just take a little bit more time to do that. It keeps going off. But I'm not on there. Oh. I'll turn that back on somewhere. Stay where it's going. All right. So I'll just get everyone to pop their mutes off now. Just a little, that microphone button. Okay, that's great. A few more people there. Got John, if you're there, you can turn that off. Right, so it's going to get a little bit noisy for a while, but that's all right. Just keen to get a little bit of feedback from you, just so we can connect around this topic a little bit. Has anyone had a think about where their employees might be? Anyone want to share a bit of a picture there? No. And what their particular issues are. Right. So I think we're okay. Actually, everyone's pretty. I'm not getting much background feed, so just leave your mutes off. We should be okay. All right. So done that bit. So just along this theme with engaged people, and again, this is just a sort of guide. Don't feel like you need to box everyone into this, but it just helps to think about, the opportunities of maybe the workforce that you do have, and where people might be. So if you think about number 3, what we quite often see, and I think is commonly understood with some of the research that I'll talk through shortly, is that people in that group are not productive. They're actually costing money, as well as not achieving an awful lot. So the rule of thumb is that they're probably sitting at about 50% of what they could deliver if they were actually, engaged. So that's just a guide. Number 2 is between 60 and 90% productivity. And again, this is people who, they come to work, they know they have to work, they might just not be that passionate or connected to your business. And so there's opportunity there to kind of really grow their engagement and, their innovation and their passion for what they're doing. And I've seen this a lot in large organisations. What happens if people if they don't understand the purpose and they aren't connected to it, and they don't understand how they can actually contribute to that purpose, they make it up. And so I went into an organisation recently and spent a couple of years, and that's exactly what I saw. So you had 400 staff who didn't really know what their goals were and how the relationship with their customers had changed over the last 20 years. So in terms of systems and process, they were still doing exactly what they did 20 years ago, and hadn't changed the dial at all. So just lost my slide there. Everyone still hear me?
Yep.
Just give us a wave. Okay, I'm just lost my PowerPoint. Just 2 seconds. Any ideas? Should I just bring that back up?
Yeah.
I love that one there. Okay. There we go, we're back. Thanks, Kirsty, my lovely, over here, my lovely side panel there. Right, so yeah, that just shows the opportunity. And, there is that potential to lift that. Once you engage people with purpose and they understand actually what they have to be doing and why they matter, they can do great things. And I've seen it time and time again when we actually do that, people do lift their performance and hop into that more engaged group. It does take work to get them there, and it takes work to sustain that, but it does happen. And so your top group have the capacity to be at 100% plus. So those people are, the example of the case study I'm going to talk through. So they've moved from 65%, the target's 85%. They're at 92% now, but they're also doing other things. They're innovating, they're leading innovation, they're mentoring staff that are growing into roles, that they're really taking ownership of the business and of their part in the business. So it's been an absolute delight to see. So I'll just very quickly go over a bit of research here. I don't want to go into too much detail in it. It's really just give you some really high level current research on this idea of engagement. Engagement can be a bit of a soft HR word, so I just want to give it some real meaning. So the EEO Trust, which is the Equal Employer Opportunity Trust, does a regular survey. Their recent research has found that 88% of engaged staff agree they would put in extra effort to get a job done when needed, compared with 42% in the not engaged group. So basically, your engaged group will 100% more put in the effort. So it's compelling stuff. This is based on about, I think it's about a sample of up to 2,000 people. And what they do is they run a survey to assess engagement, and they ask those key questions. So, it's well worth getting people into that group, but you can see the return on investment. Harvard Business Review, so that they've just done a recent piece on this as well. So what they found was that those businesses that rated employee engagement as a priority were 100% more likely to deliver value to customers and shareholders than those businesses that did not see it as a priority. So again, that's a really compelling statistic. So there's sort of a driver, almost a compelling reason to invest in your people, because actually it's going to hit the bottom line. Just make sure I don't skip that one. This one was really interesting, just a high level walkthrough. This is the US Postal Service. They commissioned, it's quite funny, they commissioned a study and found that only 30% of time was actually productive. And we're talking, an organisation the size of, it was like 50,000 people or something like that. One of their biggest issues was leadership. So their managers weren't engaged, and so obviously if your manager's not engaged, it's very hard to have an engaged workforce. So what they did is they commissioned a new framework and put in place a major transformation. The framework is a little bit about what we're going to talk about soon. So it's about connecting people to the business through performance systems. Leadership development was obviously a big thing to work on. Holding managers to account, so making sure that managers had the ability to kind of understand their purpose and their connection to the business, and have KPIs or SMART goals around that. Recognition was a big part of it, and they looked at their systems and process. There was a large-scale restructure, so they lost about 30% of their workforce. They added 3.6 million deliveries, and the result was substantially increased net profit. So it was a tired old system, and they put in place some really good initiatives and performance frameworks around getting it to where it needed to be. And while that's a bigger organisation, it's scalable. There's no reason why that type of thinking can't apply to any business size. What's that? Yes, I think I've missed one there actually. Okay. My slides there. Okay, so just around this is a final bit of research here, just around Gallup. So that's it's a massive survey that a lot of HR professionals will review. It's based on about 80 million people, and it's a rolling survey. So what they tend to do is they ask sort of two key questions. So are you engaged? And they compare that to the organisations that are the most successful from a profit perspective. So what they've found is that organisations who rated in the top 25% of high performance organisations and engagement, so that correlation existed between the two, have significantly higher productivity, profitability and customer ratings, less turnover and absenteeism, and fewer safety incidents than those in the bottom 25%. So again, it's undeniable research. It's based on a massive sample that's broken down into different countries. And if you need or want that research or more information on that, just let me know, because it does give weight and credibility to the argument to actually why should we invest in our people. There is a return on investment. So I'd just like to do our own research just very quickly. So you'll just need to unmute for this one. This is could be fun or just a bit interesting. So I'd just like to have you think about to our slide here. So have a think about, have you worked for an organisation or a manager perhaps that you just weren't aligned with? So can I just get a show of hands of who's been in that experience or who's had that experience? And your hand is just down the bottom of the right-hand screen. Or you can just say yes. The little comment section down there. Okay. All right. And if you're not on mute, feel free to speak as well, because I'm just going to do a little mini survey here. Everyone's on mute. Okay, so what we're finding is that there's a bit of a group there that have had that experience. I think I'm going to put myself in that group as well, and Kirsty, yes. So we've got more than 50% of this group has been in a situation where they perhaps weren't aligned with the organisation or a manager. So that group, can you now just let me know, were you an engaged person in that? So were you number one in that organisation? Anyone number one? So just feel free to write it in the comments or let us know out loud. Okay, so we've got no one at number one in that group. What about number two? Anyone at that number two level? Okay. So there's a few people in that group and anyone in three. Yeah, so we've got a couple in 3 as well. So that just demonstrates, we're a small group sample of people, and 50% of us have pretty much been in that situation. And what we can tell from that is that there's opportunity. So there was opportunity for that group to be engaged, but because of the experience and the situation they were in, they just simply weren't at that level. So that demonstrates our own personal research, which rounds off the research part of the slides. So now we're going to get on to what do top performing organisations do. So this again is based on the experience and wisdom through Gallup. It's something that I've seen in practice. It works. So I don't see any need to kind of reinvent the wheel at all. So what Gallup does, from their perspective, there's some core things that need to happen for people to be really connected and aligned and engaged in a workplace. So the first one, which Duncan talked about before, is providing a clear vision to their people on how they connect to the company's mission and growth plans. Number 2 is about accountability. So that's about performance, and what gets measured absolutely gets done, and it has to be reviewed. That's the critical pathway as well. And if you think back to the Postal Service, they had managers that just weren't accountable. They probably didn't know what they were supposed to be doing. Never mind, they probably weren't held accountable for getting it done either. So those things need to exist together. Number 3 is about communication. So every opportunity you can, and there's no excuse now with technology to connect with people, to vision business results, recognise, share knowledge, collaborate and innovate together. And as you're doing that, you're also building dialogue across an organisation on a range of things. So that creates more of a team atmosphere as well on all those different things that you're talking about. I've done a lot of recognition programs, and it's always my pleasure to put those in place, because what I tend to do is consult with all the staff about what they actually think we need to recognise. And sometimes that ends up being a rewrite of the values, which is also a good thing. But then it creates this really positive ongoing dialogue about nominating people on a quarterly or monthly basis. And it gives people something common to talk about. That's a really positive thing. And it also reminds people about why they're in the organisation, what's important to the organisation, and what the values are. So it's sort of a threefold communication tool that really, sets a good scene for an organisation. Number 4 is around development and ongoing learning opportunities. So that's very customised. I think development and learning is different for everyone. And that's, going back to one of the questions we had, you really need to understand actually what that means for people. For some people, it's just classroom training, but actually the return on investment on classroom training is not great. It's actually about looking at more tailor-made plans, which we kind of work in that space a lot. I've just done a range of 360-degree feedback processes for an organisation, and every development plan that comes off that is different. Every manager has different needs and unique strengths and opportunities for learning. So in order for that plan and that development to be effective and have a good payoff, it needs to actually address what those person's needs are. So and number 5, grow great managers. So it's about making sure your managers have the capability to have really good relationships with people, but to actually drive business forward through holding people accountability. And it's a subtle balance. Not every manager comes with that skill set, and so that's why we end up doing a lot of work in that space in terms of identifying how do we help managers get that toolkit. And really get inside and understand how to engage people. So we do a lot of work in that space, and it's really effective. So those sort of 5 pillars are what we often refer to as organisational development. So I'm just going to pause now. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Oops, okay. Great. So we're just looking at our little comments here just to see. It's a little bit like Facebook. Right. Yeah. That's how it works. Okay, so no questions? Is that the most latest one there? Okay, all right. So I've just got a number of little comments down here, guys. So I'm just going to make sure I haven't missed anything. So we've got Rob's question. Okay, great. All right, so moving on. So a question I often ask businesses is do they invest in things like capital and technology, research and development, maintenance, and also the development of these. So it's very common that organisations or businesses will quite quickly invest in those things because they're being sold on the benefits of that new gizmo or the fact that they need to maintain that particular piece of plant or machinery. So it's often harder, though, to convince people of the need to invest in people. And often that's because the return on investment is actually quite hard to understand and interpret. So by just talking through some of that research and going through the case study I'm about to talk through, hopefully you'll get to see a little bit more about how that return on investment can play out. It will be different for every business because every business has different ways of measuring performance, but absolutely it's a great opportunity for a business to invest in people, and when we see it happen, it works. I've been in organisations that it's been in place and it's been whipped away, and I've seen the disengagement happen just about overnight when that's happened. So it's a powerful thing. So I'm just going to talk through the framework, but I'll do that with the case study. So I often think about, the overarching principle of organisational development. Like when you're just about to embark on coaching a small team of people in a code, and you think about, all the things that those kids need to know in order to play that game, whatever it might be. So some of the things that they need to get right from the word go is actually what's the point of the game, what's the purpose, what are they supposed to do with the ball, what are the positions in the team, so who's doing what, where is the goal, what end of the field it is, what the values are, so what is it, rugby or soccer, and what are the values of those games, because obviously tackling is not going to be acceptable in some games. So it's understanding all those things, and it's no different to what we need to do in organisations. So if you think about a person's first day, they've just come from an entirely new organisation who's had their own values and their own systems and their own way of doing things. The best thing you can do is orientate that person quickly to how you want to get things done and what's important to your business. Because if you don't do it, what they'll do, because most people want to achieve, is they'll just do what they think needs to be done, and that they'll just fall back to what they know, and it may not be what you want. So here's the model. So this is what I refer to as a business growth model, because it does lead to growth. So the first thing that we look at often with businesses, the first key question is what is the purpose of the business? Why are you here? What's important to you? What's your strategy? Annual plan? Where are you going? All those key questions. And sometimes businesses don't have that work done. And so sometimes it's a bit of a stare to think about, well, actually, have you thought about doing it? So the business I've recently worked with hadn't done this work to a large degree. They had some values in place. They knew they were in business to make money, that's no doubt, but they actually didn't know how much they needed to make in order to really be sustainable. And they didn't know how to break that down at that point into each individual in terms of what they needed to make per month in order to be successful. So, so we talked through that. They got some advice from their accountant, and got in place some really key performance measures around the business in terms of this is actually the dollars that are important to our business. So we did that. Then we went out and workshopped with the staff. So that's the connect your people to business purpose. So we said, we're actually quite honest. We said, actually, we're not performing as a business. There's a major problem because there was. And we'd like to really work with you as a team in terms of how do we solve that problem. So really consulted on the initial stages of this because they'd never seen this before. So there was about 2 or 3 sessions I had with the staff. And as I said before, there was a lot of venting about things that just were broken. And that's really good because that stuff needs to come out. And sometimes organisations will do surveys to understand that. And that can be equally as good. This is a small team, so the dialogue was probably just as effective as having a survey, really. But the key question I asked them once we'd gone through that was actually, now that we know that problem's there, now that we understand it's broken, what are the solutions? So kind of turning it around into more of an action plan. So we got the action plan. There was some innovation that came out of those 3 sections that have they've been sustained today. They're still in place, and they've actually led to a massive increase in performance across the whole team. And it's a little thing around the systems, process, a lot about working smarter, lean thinking. So that's a whole topic in itself, but effectively thinking about, utilising the resources effectively across the team so that we're not duplicating and sharing knowledge and sharing files and things like that. All of this stuff wasn't going on at all. Meeting routine, they weren't having meetings. They weren't really communicating. So we put in place some routines, had an agenda, and got those things up and running. And you may well have these in your businesses, so it sounds a bit sort of rudimentary, but it just shows the gap and the improvement opportunity if that's not there. So then we put in place performance systems. So this is the tools that we provide. We work through the SMART goals with the staff, and SMART goals are about making sure those goals are, they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, because otherwise you can set people up to fail. So we do quite a bit of work around training people on that and getting those goals crystal and right and fit for purpose. We also put in a behavioural competency framework. So this is about, actually, these are the behaviours that are really important to our business. We want to everyone to behave that way together, and this is how we want to present to our clients. So that was also important as a total part of that performance framework. So everyone was aligned, they were connected to the purpose, they were given targets and given support, keyword, to achieve that. So we weren't going to just dump them in it and say, hit 85 by next week. We knew it was going to be a bit of a journey. And it has been. So that brings us down to the next bubble there. So that's understand your employees' needs and support this. So as a consequence of me working with the team, I very quickly understood everyone's different needs. Everyone has different backgrounds and wants different things from the workplace, which is what we talked about before with one of the questions. So I've developed sort of different plans within the performance forms for each person and helped the directors to understand exactly what their staff are looking for and what they need from them. So as an example, our rock star who's moved from 3 to 1, so he started at 65%, he's now at 92, he actually really wanted to coach. And he really wanted to innovate, and he was really frustrated by the fact that whatever he tried just wasn't getting through, and it was sort of just getting stopped at the director point. So we've enabled that dialogue through the routines and the systems now. So we have an agenda item of innovation. He is now accountable for delivering on that. So we've agreed with the directors that will be his role. He will bring the innovation to them. They'll agree to it. If they agree, and then he will lead that project with the team. So he's on fire now. He's been enabled, and it was just that simple. Those systems and the process and the communication around how do we actually make this happen. We've got another couple of people who have lifted their performance by 100%. Sorry, there's 4 that have lifted their performance by 100%. So their performance is quite low in starting because their capability wasn't there. They were quite new to the role. And so they've all shifted the dial by over 100% in some cases. And so that's time and learning and knowledge. But that's been enabled by our rock star who has been coaching and mentoring. So all these things have contributed to the overall team performance. We've also been helping them with recruitment and ensuring they've got the right people in the right roles. So part of that was actually they needed a successor in the business. So there was a lot of work. It took quite a bit of time because it's quite a tight market for these roles. Got the right person in there, and now I'm working on a coaching plan with this person. So we've sat down and we've worked out exactly what this young person needs, and they do have a lot of development requests from the business in order to be engaged with the business. So we've got a really crystal clear plan. It's well supported through e-learning. That's an option for development with blended learning, so coaching and e-learning and maybe a bit of classroom training. And probably some sort of key industry sector things that they'll go to as well. But the thing that's important is the communication of that. So they understand that they are in this plan, they've been given that support, and this is where the organisation sees them. So it's really important to keep that person engaged using those tools so they actually know where they're going and what the future looks like for the business and for them. So the fourth part there is around the review, recognise and adapt. So obviously these systems are all great. What can happen is they get put in place and then the meetings don't happen, the performance reviews don't happen, development plans aren't delivered on, or people aren't achieving things. So that whole process has to be reviewed. And so at the moment, because this business is still growing, they're using me at the moment to kind of keep that system in check. So I'm still doing a lot of the meetings and a lot of the, keeping it to schedule and a lot of the development planning and that sort of thing. What I will be doing though, which is something that Grow's really good at, is actually enabling the business to kind of pick this framework up and run with it. So the new person that's come in with a development plan to be a successor for the directors, and also she's stepped into sort of a team management role, will pick up the system, and I'm coaching her on that as part of her development plan. So she'll be accountable for delivering on that total process at some point in time. So we're just helping her through that. The other part of that is recognition. So there's been a lot of time put into this. There's been some outstanding results. The business is now hitting, has improved on their productivity by over 100% now, and that's being sustained for a year. And there's still opportunity there, but in a year's time, it's not a bad performance indicator improvement. So what I would suggest to the business that they now need to step back and actually recognise people. So they're doing that by way of sort of selective bonuses based on productivity and performance. And we're going to do that going forward as well. So the person that the rock star, so they are accountable now for driving productivity for the people in their sort of area of control. So they'll be looking at coaching and mentoring them to get them up from where they currently are. And if they achieve that, then it makes sense that they're recognised for that as well. So that's how it all sort of fits together. Any questions at this point?
Just from experience in small businesses, it's often hard to keep momentum with these initiatives. And I know you said that lady who's sort of taken it upon is now accountable and you're coaching her. But quite often in small businesses, everyone gets busy and these what you specifically said, the you know, the interviews and the performance appraisals, they fall by the wayside. So they might be good for even a year or two, and then after that, people get busy. And if a business doesn't have the resources for a dedicated HR person, yeah, it's just I know it's a widespread problem. I just don't know how you counter it. I guess unless you know engage with an external company, I guess, like such as Grow to do it. It's a perennial problem, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, ultimately our goal is about efficiency for the business. It's, you know, obviously understand if we're in there doing it all the time, it's probably not the best model long term. But the reality is when you look at the return on investment, and I just want you to think about some numbers here. So we have, you know, moved the dial just from a dollar perspective since we started by about 25,000 per month. So that's going from performance, you know, a year ago to where they are now. So when you think about that dollar value, the investment of the consultant and that piece has probably been quite worthwhile. Is it sustainable? I'd like to think that we can actually, you know, grow this new person into the role and she'll sustain the process. But I'm sure that we'll be in there doing various things, because the business has sort of said, well, actually, you know, because we've had you doing that, we've moved that dial significantly. So it's been worth investing in the sort of consultancy to get that done. And, you know, that's just a very tangible way of demonstrating and actually dealing with that dilemma. Because even in large organisations, it's the same problem. Managers don't have time often to do these things. But it's also, I think a lot of it is actually convincing the people that need to be convinced that it actually is worthwhile, and really talking about that return on investment. Because if people are engaged with the business, they will do great things. If they're not, there's risks involved there. You know, we didn't get into the employment relations landscape. That's a whole other topic. But, you know, as I say, we spend a lot of time helping businesses fix those problems. And when you kind of unpeel that onion, and which I often do, and look back at, you know, how have we got to this place? How can we help the business avoid this in the future? Often it is about, you know, communication has sort of got lost somewhere. The person has become disconnected for various reasons. You know, sometimes there's a personal component, absolutely. But, you know, once again, if you've got a really good manager who's really good at having, you know, that sort of dialogue and maintaining that trust in the relationship, you can overcome a lot of stuff and avoid some of those things from happening. But it's a challenge, you know, it's a challenge for all businesses. Absolutely agree. I guess that's why we have people like Grow. So any other questions? It's hard to tell on these webinars if people are asleep. So I think we're not getting any messages. I think we're good to, yeah, it's gone down, isn't it? Great. Great. All right, so just moving on there. We're nearly there. So great time, you know, to spend time with you today and just cover some of those key topics. What I wanted to do was more explain the high level principles, some research around what we're actually talking about, and sort of build a case for why you would consider this. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff within the topic that we can flesh out, perhaps in other webinars and other briefings. But, you know, from this point, if you are, you know, concerned about business performance or thinking about how do I engage people more from where they are now, more than happy to catch up with people for a coffee just to kind of nut that out a little bit, because every business is different, and you may well be kind of well on that path and have some really good things in place, but maybe there's just a bit of momentum that you're still reaching for there. And as I say, that's why it's good just to have a coffee and chat about that, to assess that need. And then go from there. So if anyone wants to catch up about that, we're more than welcome. More than happy to come and do that. You've got all our contact details, and we'd really appreciate the opportunity to kind of get in there and help you grow your business, because ultimately that's what one of Grow's, you know, core motivations is really. It's not just about being the ambulance in the bottom of the cliff. we do that a lot, and we do that really well. But actually, it's also about helping you to be really successful. So we'd love the opportunity to get into that place with you. So from here, we possibly will do some more webinars around different topics sort of in November, and potentially even on the same topic. Just after the briefing on Tuesday, we had a bit more demand for it. So, and what we'll probably do is come out to you as well, and just if there's things that I've talked about today, or things within that you want us to talk about more, please do let us know. Email Kirsty, and we can develop briefings around that to hopefully sort of fit in with exactly what it is that you're looking for. So hopefully that hasn't been too hard to sit through. Webinars are a bit different than face-to-face, but as I say, I'd love to have a coffee if you want to talk more about your business. And thanks for joining today, everyone.